This is the Other 22 Hours podcast. Hey, and welcome to this week's episode of the Other 22 Hours podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Shafer-Haiss.
And I'm your other host, Michaela Anne. And since this show is not even a year old, thank you so much for being here. If you're a returning listener, thank you for coming back. If you are brand new to us, thank you for checking it out.
Yeah, we know there are thousands or maybe even millions of podcasts out there to choose from. So we're really humbled that we have so many people that come back and listen to multiple episodes. Chances are you found out about our podcast via word of mouth or social media, or maybe somebody in your band was playing it in the van. However you heard about us, if you could just pass it on the same way, text your favorite episode to a friend, sneak it on in the van when it's your driving duties, whatever it might be. We are a show that prides ourselves on our community. Michaela and I are lifers in the music industry, and we want to lead these conversations with other artists to help our community as a whole. And as the tide rises, so do all the ships. So if you could do your little part to pass that on, the more listeners we get, the more guests we can get, and the more ideas we can share with everybody.
Yeah, and we're not your typical music promo show. We're not trying to promote artists' latest records, their latest tours, though we do talk about those things. But the focus of our conversation is the behind-the-scenes nitty-gritty of what people do to keep going. What are some of the tools and routines they've found helpful in staying inspired, creative, and sane while building a career around their art?
Yeah, and as we talk with today's guests, there is a lot in this industry that is outside of our control. So we wanted to focus on what is within our control: our mindsets, our intentions, our creativity,
our organizational skills.
Very much so. And so with that in mind, we decided to invite some of our friends and some of our favorite artists onto the show and ask them the general question: what do you do to create sustainability in your life so that you can sustain your creativity? And today's guests are the Watson twins.
The Watson twins are, as their name suggests, twin sisters, originally from Louisville, Kentucky, spent a lot of time in LA, and now have called Nashville home for several years. They have many of their own solo records and have also been backup singers for Jenny Lewis, Harry Connick Jr., Kings of Leon, Foster the People, Willie Nelson, Margo Price, just to name a few.
Yeah, huge list of artists. And they have a really great mindset about the whole thing, very based in community and togetherness and working together. As they say, they've been collaborating since conception. I don't know if they want us to share that, but it's on there now.
It was debatable if it was too weird or not.
But if you can imagine, they shared a womb, and so it has been a collaborative existence for the two of them for their entire life, and they share that in their work with other artists. They share that in their work as front women and band leaders. And they also share that in their other businesses. They own and run 3 event spaces here in Nashville. And so we get to talk about that diversification.
This was the heaviest tour conversation we've had, of the logistics of especially van touring, of how to take care of a band, helpful hints, which I think I would have really appreciated knowing when I was first starting out touring. So I think this was a really essential conversation.
Yeah, so many actionable nuggets in here. They just have such a great, really grounded, positive viewpoint on things, with a lot of gratitude and a lot of appreciation for what is going on. There's a lot of using the language like we get to do this versus we have to do this.
I also really like the differentiation between gut check and ego check, as well as the focus on not focusing so much on our individuality, which is contrary to a lot of greater cultural influences.
Yeah. So this is another one of our episodes that has a little bit of a technical glitch at the end, and it just kind of cuts short. So such is life. One thing that I really wanted to get back to that we didn't have a chance because the internet decided it wanted to do something else today. But Chandra says that the music industry doesn't equal A plus B equals C. It's unpredictable. We all know that. But she did point out what is predictable is when you continue to do things that are soul-sucking and that do not feel right. Gigs, tours, whatever it is that doesn't feel right and in line with who you are as an artist, that inevitably is A plus B equals C, and that you will burn out, you'll feel deflated. And that's just so beautiful. It's something that I think we all know, but just putting that to words is really nice. With that, we'll be back at the end of the show to wrap it up properly. But for now, here's our conversation with the Watson twins.
When Karen brought it up, we were like, we know them.
Yeah.
She was like, is there anything off limits that, you shouldn't talk about? We're like, no.
Yeah, it's funny. We get pitched by publicists sometimes. We get the full on, very pro pitch. And we're like, cool. Yeah, we'll just text with them. It's cool. Thanks, though.
Yeah, I imagine that happens to you guys a lot because you guys know everybody or a lot of people.
Yeah, it's been funny. And also now we're getting to know a lot of publicists. So
Yeah.
That's not necessarily a bad thing.
No, it was also pretty amazing. Like, it was pretty immediate after we released the first bunch of episodes. We just started getting emails every week from publicists. And we're like, wow, these people really are on it. At least we're not paying them like thousands of dollars a month for absolutely nothing. Like, that's great.
Right?
But the interesting aspect is like the whole tag and description of this podcast is we're the anti-album cycle podcast. We're not like promoting records, and publicists work album cycles. So they're like, but their album, and we're like, that's great, but we're not going to talk about their album.
That's not what we're doing right now.
Yeah. It inadvertently promotes people's records because it introduces people. And I feel like as an artist who's done a lot of interviews, I would rather do this type of stuff that's deeper and like fans can actually get to know you in a different way rather than just how'd you make the record? Where'd you make the record?
And I think that's where a lot of this stuff is going, as like how we connect with fans is not necessarily through the music anymore. It's through being a person and finding that thing that connects you to another person. And it doesn't matter friend, fan, family, peer, whatever. It's really about how we connect in that way. For sure.
Yeah, it's funny. It's weird because I feel like in some cases the music is almost a byproduct of becoming a fan of a musician because you connect with their like public persona or what they stand for. And there's so many people that I follow on Instagram and I'm like, have I listened to their songs though?
I didn't know anything about Butch Walker until we became friends. And a record, but it's then of course listening to his music and working with him on his last record, it was like, I'm a huge fan. I just think he's an amazing person, but he's also an amazing songwriter and singer and guitar player. And I think this goes back to what this podcast is about, which is the other 22 hours. It's like when we talk about going on tour, it's really important who's in the band. There's only 45 minutes that we're on stage together. So even if they're like a rad player, if they don't vibe or have a bad attitude, that can really like
the whole mix off,
sour the whole experience, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we talk about, but also that people don't realize how important that is because you take that on stage with you. So that's why really trying to find your program, as they say, on those other times, like we can all rehearse and play the songs and be perfectionists around the technicality of the music. But ultimately, it's those other moments that really are our pre-show game that get us to the game, you know?
Yeah.
And when the band like really vibes in the van, off stage and all that, you feel that in the music. You feel that connection, you feel that energy on stage, and it's more inviting for me. Having done this for years and seen the sausage made enough, like I can tell, you know, when you go to see a band, you're like, yeah, they're
not getting along.
Again today.
Yeah, and it's weird. I feel like for those of us that have been doing this a long time, when you like look at it from a non-musician perspective of like how insane it actually is that you gather 5 people that you're all like working together, but you literally spend 24/7 together for several weeks, sitting side by side, sharing every meal, sometimes sleeping in the same bed in your younger days. And it's pretty insane and not healthy. So
we oftentimes look at each other and we're like, we have a really weird job.
We have a very weird job.
And we get paid to do this, which is even more bizarre, you know? We drive around with people we know and we take our instruments around and we perform for 1 hour. And then the rest of the time we're eating, sleeping, laughing in silence, all of the things, listening to podcasts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I feel like looking back when I was younger, I would just be like, what bass player can we get? Who's willing to come for shit pay? And like now it feels so intimate. Luckily, when Aaron tours with me, it's only been like close friends the last few years, which has been really nice.
That's amazing. Awesome. Yeah.
But,
or a friend of a friend to keep it in the family and always a recommendation. And that has served us well, for sure.
Yeah. Aren't you guys about to play a show together?
We are about to play a show together.
I was like, isn't Aaron about to be in your van?
This is my audition right now, actually.
We make a really good impression in this interview.
That's funny. I've been thinking the same thing. I'm like, I better not say anything. I'll hold my tongue.
You're already jumped in. You already know all the people. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, your band is all old friends and good
Yeah.
friends.
And then talking about you guys touring together, it's like we have the same thing, which I think you have that bond together that we look after each other when we're on the road. And just in trying to support each other, there's not a lot of people who have that. And I feel very fortunate that we're able to do music together and to take care of each other when the other one's exhausted or lost their voice or whatever sort of personal challenge comes up. There's someone else to talk through with and also carry the load of being the band leaders, you know? Because that's the other part of the other 22 hours that people don't think about too, which is there's all of those other difficult moments that happen where it's like, okay, flat tires and someone is sick in the van or somebody just had a fight with a loved one at home or something like that happened. It's humans being human in that 22 hours too. It's not just like, oh, and all we do is listen to music and have great conversations. There's a whole life that they bring with them in the van as well. Yeah. I think as being female band leaders and front women, we got into this really deep conversation with our band on the last tour about relationships. And I'm looking at the three guys in the van and I'm like, would you have had this conversation if there were two guys sitting here driving you and two male front people? Would you have had the same conversation? And they were like, we might have had a version of this conversation, but it wouldn't have been the same. Again, the cool thing about the dynamic is it really is this weird ecosystem of personalities and experiences, and you're all moving towards one goal, which is to try and get safely to your next destination, to potentially have some fun, to potentially eat something delicious and play a show and hopefully get some sleep and do it all over again.
Yeah.
Yeah. We usually talk to people a year from now in your situation. Your record just came out like in the last few months, right?
Yes. Yeah, at the end of June. Yeah.
Yeah.
We started touring and setting it up in April. So we've been touring quite a bit since.
How has that been getting back into touring and being the front people? And
yeah, I think just getting through COVID and coming out the other side of that, I think there was definitely, as you know, some trepidation about getting back to doing that work in that way. But we have a really great record that we love. And a big part of our job is to make the music. And then the second part of that is to get out there and share it with people. Yeah. And when you have a record like Holler, where we're going out and we're seeing people's faces light up and we're seeing people sing along to the songs and be excited about the music, it's a very joyful record. We made it live in the studio with our touring band. And so there was a real intimacy and familial connection when we made the record. And so we're carrying that on in these live shows. Yeah. And I think that there was trepidation, but there was also, it sounds weird, but it's like, we don't have children. So our records are our babies. And our dogs, as you and our dogs. Yeah. But, you know, when you have a record, it's your job to take care of it. And part of taking care of it as one of our babies is that we have to go on the road and share it with people. I don't want to say have to. We get to go out on the road and share it with people. But it's definitely, as you guys know, it is exhausting. It's mentally and physically challenging. We're getting our nails done and talking to our nail technicians, and they were like, ooh, you get to go on the road. Like, you guys just jump on a bus and like sleep. And we're like, no. We're like, that's not the kind of touring we do. We love that y'all think we're on a bus. You know, and I think that people have these ideas of what it is. But, you know, we're from a background and a generation where a lot of our friends have been doing this and we've been doing it for a long time. And so it really is part of your DNA at this point, you know, and people get itchy, like I'm home too much. Like we're both travelers. So even when we're not on the road talking about finding balance, it sounds weird that we would travel for our balance. We love food, we love experience, and we love being out of our comfort zone. And that's probably because we're touring musicians.
Yeah.
That's something that feels familiar to us and that we find joy in that. It does prep us for knowing the best restaurant in Philadelphia when we get there. And I say best, I don't mean expensive.
Yeah.
It feels healthy. And when we talk about like food is a big one for us. That's a big part of making sure that the band is not eating in a gas station. You know, like we're searching out. Unless that's by choice.
Yes. Right. We have this conversation a lot because we started dating when we were 21 years old, moved in together at like 23, right after we graduated from college. Yeah. So we had no money, but since the beginning of time, what we've spent our money on is food. Good
Yes.
food. That's what we care about. And when we go on tour, you know, we stop at Whole Foods. Like, we spend our money on food, and we've had different...
Because it is exhausting. Because touring is exhausting. So we're like, we want to eat good food so that we can have energy and we can like... It's easier to stay positive and optimistic and like handle the inevitable ups and downs of every day being in a van.
Well, people get hangry. It's
Yeah.
a thing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But then if you eat poor food, then it just keeps you in that really negative space. Granted, also, I love a good junk food. Like,
I've seen you eat like 2 hot dogs for breakfast on occasion. So let's just...
I love that stuff. But that's why I have to compensate, with the foundation of good food. But we have traveled with some people who, you know, are very budget conscious, and they're like, I'm not shopping at Whole Foods. We like ran into somebody who was a friend of someone we took on tour, and he was like, I heard you guys eat really well. And we're like, okay.
Our reputation. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of it, though. And we really do try to carve out time. We laugh because we're pretty sure that touring bands are keeping Starbucks in business.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean, it's not great, but you can get that like little fruit and nut tray and a green juice and a coffee if that's the way you want to start your day. Or you can get an Impossible egg sandwich, which is usually
Yeah, we have a kid now, so it's, I guess, a little bit more normal for me. But prior, we were in that middle part of the country where it's like really hard to get any kind of fresh fruit or vegetable. And we were at Starbucks and they had this little baby food pack. And I looked at it and it was like apples and pears and kale. And that was it. And I was like, cool, I'm doing it. So there I was.
And I have thought that before. I have been in that line going like, how do I get greens today? I wonder if I could eat that.
You know, if you can like just push your ego aside a little bit, it's just a smoothie, like in a really handy squeeze pack, you know?
Yeah.
We need road hack. And we also, there's a business idea in here somewhere where it's these fruit packs for adults. We just use smoothie in a pack.
Yeah, exactly. Because you can pack them all together. They don't have to be cold.
I feel like we should also mention, for just because we should help spread the word, our friends have this incredible website called Tour Food.
Yeah, tourfood.us.
US.
And these are 2 friends that toured for a long time. One is Adam Schatz, who plays in Japanese Breakfast and a whole bunch of other things. And the other one is Charlie Ferguson, who's in Hooray for the Riff Raff for a long time. But I toured with them for years when we lived in New York. Same thing, they always like the best restaurant, which might be like the greasy cheesesteak joint. But they kept a running list, and all of us friends like had a Google spreadsheet that was like passed around of all these lists. Well, they turned it into a website, and you can like search by city, you can search the route that you're on.
Yes.
You can select, will this be open after my show? So they will only show you restaurants that are open late.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's a lifesaver.
Thanks, y'all.
Yeah, we'll tag that. So one of the things I often think about musician lifestyle is you have all these different phases. The creation phase where you're writing and nurturing yourself and excavating yourself, and then the recording phase, and all varying levels of solitary versus communal versus very communal with touring. And you guys right now are in that tour phase. How do you care for yourselves when you are on the road, and also being the bosses, which we touched on a little bit, but like you not only have to care for each other and check each other on the road, you now are like running everything and caring for 3 other people. What are some of the things you guys have to do? Do you just, okay, we get through this and then we take care of ourselves when we get home? Or do you have any things you've learned over the years?
Yeah, I think for us, the food thing is really important, and just being in check with what you're putting in your body. You know, we like to stock the band with healthy snack mixes, and we just had a new bass player join us on the last tour, and he was like, there's a rolled up blanket and a pillow and snacks in here. My mom embroiders blankets with the album cover on the front for every record, for each record. And this record, she made pillows too that say Holler on them, that are the logo of the album. So cute. But then the guys open the band, they're like, what? But I think, you know, creating a nice, comfortable environment for us, we work during the day. I'm sure as you guys do, like when we're on the road, we're checking things off the list of things we have to do, or getting back to PR, or the label needs this, or brainstorming what's next, or who we're going to reach out to, or we call it the mobile office, and we work while we're driving. And then of course we also then have great conversations and listen to music and podcasts. But I think probably the key components for us are really that balance of eating well. I think one of the things that we invest in is we try to get decent hotel rooms, and we try to get people space. So we're not old school style, 4 people in a hotel room, that kind of stuff. And that's been something that we've spent more money on, just to have people have their own space, because I think, especially just being an older touring musician, everybody does have home lives, whether that's kids at home or a partner. And so to have that space to speak with their loved one and like stay connected to home, I think that keeps people grounded. And then really, you know, a lot of pre-production when we're out there, and a lot of pre-production before, just making sure we always give ourselves extra time on the drive in case we have issues. We don't do late night drives.
Yeah, stress can like turn your nervous system into
a wasteland.
Yeah, that also we just know illness creeps in and all of those things. And so I think for us, we're just trying to create our best case scenario and think there's two of us. A lot of people roll, oh, we don't have hotel rooms tonight. We'll just hotel tonight something. Oh, I'm like scouring the Travelocity, the TripAdvisor, all of the things to find
the reviews,
the cheapest, best thing that we can afford. We have a budget, and we try to really work within those numbers to make it work for the run. But also, if I have to drive 20 minutes outside the city to get a better room that is going to be quiet, and I'm not going to be worried about where the van's parked, it's worth it.
Yeah. And so that pre-production element, I think, for us and also for the band, because if you are the leader and the boss person and you're making decisions for people, I think them knowing that you have their best interest in mind and that you're really trying to create a peaceful environment. There's so many variables that are out of our control. And so it is complete surrender when you're out there. And I think realizing the things you can control and that you can invest a little bit of time and potentially a little bit more money in certain things that are within your power, because the other things are completely out of your control. So you show up, the sound guy's not there, or he isn't participating, or whatever happens, you know, again, you thought there was a rider, there's not, whatever those kind of hiccups are that you're like, you want to be prepared for those and try to be at your best. That's a big one for us, is just really being organized and the pre-production element of things and trying to make it as peaceful of an experience for the people we're with.
Yeah, that's such a huge change that happened for me early on. I feel like I'd be like, okay, tour's booked. You find a place to stay day of, and you book a hotel frantically from your phone after the gig, and you're like, shit, where are we sleeping tonight? Or, you know, I want an extra hour of sleep tomorrow, so I'm going to push it time-wise. And then you're so stressed because you hit traffic. And learning those things of booking hotels ahead of time, planning everything ahead of time, knowing that like the stress if you hit traffic is going to make you more exhausted than that extra hour of sleep in bed at the hotel. Like that kind of stuff just made touring so much nicer.
Also, just having all the tools that we have now. We talk about the mobile office. We can be in the van on a hotspot,
sending stuff
doing work, whereas before we were on phones and stuff like that, and still working on phones as well. But there's just another element to it to where we're not getting there and then trying to set up the merch, trying to load in gear, trying to do all the things, and again, creating that level of stress. We get there, the computer's closed, and we really try in the lead up to the show to just be center focused and to understand that it's only 45 minutes to an hour and a half that we get to share our music with the people who are there. And so how do we mentally prepare for that? And we'll catch each other because we have a side hustle for our side hustle. We own event spaces here in Nashville, and we try not to talk our work talk before we go on, and we try to talk about things we're grateful for or happy experiences and really try to set that tone for like how we're getting on stage. And that sort of feeds into that stress conversation. It is your mantra, your meditation, whatever you're doing before you get on stage. It's really important to ground you and to keep you in that moment so that you're not thinking about, oh, when I get on stage, I have to find us a hotel.
You're not singing the song being like, where are we sleeping tonight?
Yeah.
In the back of your mind, subconsciously, you're like, oh, I gotta find 3 hotel rooms. I hope they're under $150.
Yeah. Which that barely exists anymore. Even like insane. Terrible Super 8s are like $100 now.
I know. Yeah, I think for us, the mind is very powerful, and it can turn a show that there's not very many people there, but the venue is beyond excited that you're there because they're all fans, and they rolled out the red carpet and your writer's there and the dressing room's nice and you can decompress and you're in a cool part of the city where your band can wander off and just walk. And I think that's the other thing is we really try to give ourselves, when we get into town, time to get out, stretch, walk, breathe outside of our tube that we're traveling through time and space.
Put your feet on the ground and just be a human for a little bit. It makes a huge difference, even if it's just 15 minutes of walking around the block and getting away from the 5 people you've been in a van with for a little bit and just be like, oh, I am an autonomous human being. This is great. I can make my own decisions.
We had a great bass player one time who told us, I just assume when you're on tour that I'm probably annoying someone in the van just by being here.
I'm probably turning the pages in my book too fast for somebody, so...
I'm probably swallowing too loudly, so...
Oh my God. We had, right when iPhones came out, our key player at the time got a new iPhone. And you know, when you get an Apple device, when you hit the keys, it has the click sound. So he had a flip phone, and then
he was also, we were early 30s or whatever, and he was like already like almost 50. He was an older, old school cat. Technology was also a little bit harder for him.
So our drummer, who was just like the kindest soul, this went on for hours that first day. As he was texting his wife and friends, and finally our drummer just like whips around. He's like, you know, you can turn that sound off, right? Let me do it for you.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, that is the I'm drinking too loudly.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah. And I also want to note, I get to tread both sides of the line, being married to Michaela and touring with her and being her right-hand man on the road, but also having toured with other people in a lot of different situations. And the more organized the front people are, the better it is for the band too. Even if there isn't something like a master tour or like a tour book or whatever it is, just having the front people know what's happening ahead of time and be organized, it makes you feel less trapped. Otherwise, you're just like, I don't know what's going on minute to minute. Who knows what time we're getting in the van tomorrow morning? You know, as somebody that like, I like to have my alone. I like to hang and do all that on the road, but I also like to have my alone time. So if I know lobby call is this time.
Did you just correct that to make sure they know you're nice and social for
No, no.
You were like, wait, I do like to hang out, guys. Don't worry.
Like one night you to hang. Yes, no, that's our thing too. Where we always,
Everyone's invited.
Everyone's invited to hang after the show, but it's not an obligation. So
yeah. I mean, because like we've toured with people that they get in the van, it's immediately like headphones on.
Don't
they get out and like immediately start loading in. You're like, dude, loading's not for like an hour. Where are you bringing all? You know, those people that are just don't even notice that there's other people around. But no, just saying is I like to physical exercise on there. I like to go for like a run, and just because there's so much of the day that's sitting around. So like, if I know what time lobby call is, it's like I can plan tomorrow morning, or I can plan like, oh cool, load in is this time, and I actually have like time to go like find a cool place to eat that's further from the venue between sound check and the show. Just knowing all that just frees everything up a little bit and just makes it so much
Our
more
joke
manageable.
is that we do master tour, and I usually am the one responsible for loading everything in there. And then it never fails that we spend the first 3 days of tour where
trying
like
to get everybody on master tour.
Yep.
It's like the tour management joke, which is everyone's always asking the tour manager, what time's lobby call, or what time's this call, or what time,
is there a buyout tonight, or
look on your phone.
I've heard tour managers joke about making t-shirt that says it's in master tour and just wearing that every day.
I wanted to shift gears a little bit, and I wanted to talk about your side hustles, because one of the things that we like to talk about on this is, rather than even calling them side hustles, but just diversification as artists, because there's this kind of stigma or this idea, if you have to do anything else besides your music, that somehow you're not a full professional musician. And I think the reality is actually you need to take care of yourself financially, and the music business is getting harder and harder and harder to make a living. So it's not some reflection on your artistic capabilities. It's being a really smart business person to care about your financial wellness and know that maybe it's not all going to come from this one pot. And also, if you can create some financial well-being elsewhere, it might even free up a lot of artistic creative energy when it's not attached to that. I wanted, because you guys are businesswomen and you also do everything together, which we want to talk about that as well. But so you own event spaces. How did that come, and when did that come in to your careers? Because you guys started putting out records and then did those projects.
We were living in LA, and we both had jobs there, but they were flexible. So we were able to leave and go on the road and then come back and have a job, which was really amazing. And we were able to do that for many years.
Was it amazing though?
It was amazing that allowed us to tour. We didn't have to quit every time.
Yeah.
Commercial production, getting people coffee. So don't.
Yeah.
The best. Yeah, she was working commercial production, and I was working at an art gallery. I had a little bit better job. It was my clients who would let me leave for 3 weeks and then come back and have a job and sell high-end art, which was great. But I think we had started talking about, at that time, I had recently gotten married. My husband and I toured for many years. He was in a band, and so we weren't seeing a lot of each other. And then we kind of one day looked at each other and were like, we like each other. Maybe we should try to figure out something else that we're not both just touring all the time and trying to scramble for money and that kind of stuff. And so we started, that would have probably been in like 2009 or 2010. We started talking about, okay, if we were to open a business, what would it look like?
And we're originally from Louisville, Kentucky. This part of the country is familiar to us. And our older sister had been living in Gallatin. And so family trips,
we would always come to
Nashville. And so we started getting to experience the city a little bit more. And back then, I say it was like so long ago, but it wasn't that long ago, that it was just a very
drastically
quiet, sleepy kind of city that felt familiar to us.
And the more we started talking about trying to find a career path that would work for our music career, I think that's why it took us 4 years, because it was like, okay, we don't want to have a brick and mortar that you have to go in every day like a retail shop, and we don't want to work in food service, and we don't want to have an office job. And so we spent a lot of time kicking around ideas that could help supplement our income and give us some stability while also still allowing us to do music, because we didn't want to give that up. And I think that's a choice that a lot of people have to make. They can't figure out a way to do both. And so eventually they end up not maybe completely giving it up, but realizing, hey, it's not sustainable to be on the road and be able to do those things. So I'm grateful that we found it something that we felt like we could set up that would lend itself to our music career. And that was actually, the catalyst was Lee was engaged and getting married. And her husband is from England. And so they were like, let's get married in Nashville. It's centrally located in the country. It'll be easier for people to get to. And they also just loved Nashville. And as a Brit, just fell in love with, the South. And so they were looking at event spaces here. And that was like 2011.
In 2011, yeah. And we were going to see all these places, and it was antebellum homes with doilies and plantations and things. And he was just, I don't know if I can do this. This is very strange and doesn't feel familiar at all. And we were just looking for something that...
do it in the right accent, though. I don't try to do his accent because he does a southern accent.
He tries to do the southern accent. I'm like, baby, no.
Yeah.
But, we were looking, and the thing that resonated, honestly, was regardless of the space, was that for us to get married on a Saturday, it was 2 years we had to wait because there was no availability. And so it was just strictly a supply and demand. And I always, now that we've been in business for 10 years and we have 3 spaces, which it started with 1, I always tell people who are starting businesses, I'm like, find your audience and how many of them are there, and try to find your hole in the market. And so we concepted our first space. We wanted something downtown. Music City Center wasn't open yet, and so something that was close to there, and also that had, proximity to Broadway and other tourist attractions, because 85 people out of our 100-person guest count were coming from other places. They didn't live in Nashville, And so I came back to LA, and I was talking with Chandra and one of my other close friends and just telling them about what was out there. Our mom jokingly said while she was looking, like, why don't you just buy a piece of property and put a tent on it for the weekend? And then you own something in Nashville.
And then you can eventually build a home on it or whatever, but it'll be an investment versus just renting a space. And we are creative, so we went, let's buy a condemned building and fix it up and start a business that we've never run before. That'll be cool, won't it? And so I think we were, I tell people, I'm like, we were creatives. And also when you're a musician, you do every kind of job. Office job. I mean, we joke about it. I worked for a PI at some point in LA. I mean, catering,
waiting table.
Yeah. So I worked in floral, high-end art. I had done a bazillion different things. And really, when we started looking at our skill set, we were like, we've hosted parties. We both worked in production, which is basically throwing an event. I've done sales. We've been in food service, been in florals. So it was like all of a sudden it was like, we've done everything around this. We just haven't done this. So we just set our minds to it. And one of our best friends, who was also from the South, wanted to move closer to home. And she was like, I want to be involved. I'd love to do it. So we had a lot of support as far as just guidance from a lot of people that had been in the industry and that were willing to meet with us.
And this was a point in time where Nashville hadn't exploded yet. And so we came and we decided we wanted a meeting with the mayor's office.
We did.
And we went, dude, can we have a meeting with the mayor's office? And they said, what day you want to come in?
Yeah, next week? Does that work for you?
Wow.
I mean, and it was like we were just going around meeting everybody in Nashville, talking about this concept that we had, that we wanted something that felt modern, but also felt historic and rooted in the South, but
not a plantation.
Yeah, we were. And so when we actually found it in a real estate search when I was working at the art gallery, and saw this boarded up building, and it had a sign on it that said make an offer. And I saw the picture of it, and I sent it to our realtor and just said, hey, because we were coming here to look at some properties, and sent it to the realtor and said, hey, we want to come see this property. And she was like, I don't think so.
She's like, it's not in a good part of town.
It's not a good part of town, which is hilarious because
it's downtown.
It's where Husk is and
Third Lindsley.
but none of that was there. Only
Right.
Third Lindsley was there. And we're like, yeah, we want to see this property. And it was boarded up. We had flashlights when we went in. It had a fire inside. It was gutted. It was in really bad shape. And the three of us got on the plane to go home, and we started having the conversation about this building. And I was like, okay, how would you guys feel if somebody else bought this building
or
right
tore
now?
it down?
Or tore it down.
Condemned, you know?
And a lot of people are like, the property is only worth the property and the bricks. That's it. The house is worth nothing. And we all just agreed. We're like, we would be heartbroken if somebody else either tore it down or bought it.
Yeah.
And so it was like, okay, that's the beginning of just the journey.
Architecturally, it was exciting to us. And also, we wanted to have some more stability, and we wanted to be able to have something that we felt passionate about. And I think when you're looking for, as you mentioned, that balance, I think that was one of the things, like in thinking about doing this podcast, that came up when Chandra and I were talking about it, that balance of having that other thing, whether it's parenting or whether it's partnering or whether it's running a small business or whether it's painting or photography or whatever it is, having that other thing creates balance, and it also gives you more gratitude for the music.
Yeah.
It scratches a different itch, and it's, again, we get to do this. We don't have to do it. And for a long time, touring was, we have to do it because it's the only way we make money. And we were on the hamster wheel. I can imagine where, of course, our business went through a crazy time during COVID as well, because we were shut down and we couldn't do weddings, but we had a staff of 7 people where we could apply for PPP, and all of the things that small business did to get through it, we were able to use the knowledge that we had in running the business and that tenacity that we will get through this. You know, all the stuff we learned on the road.
Yeah.
And to now have them both shake each other's hand and be like, hey, we're in this together. It gives us gratitude on both sides.
Yeah.
You know,
With the creative life, it's really hard. There's no equation, right? So A plus B doesn't always equal C. Make a record, get a record deal, it's going to go great.
Yeah.
Not what happens. So it's like sometimes A to B equals F, or whatever. And you're just like, well, I didn't see that coming. So I think having a business where you're like, okay, if we do the marketing right, and if we present a good product, and if we have a great system and procedures, and we're creating all these systems as we grow our business, it gives me a lot of satisfaction, because I'm like, A plus B does equal C, which in the creative life, it doesn't. So it's nice to have our other side of our life be something that feels a little bit more reliable in that way, and a little bit more predictable, having forecasts and seeing things, trends. You're like, okay, this is our busy season and this is what it looks like. And that feels very good to have as a balance to the music stuff.
You guys probably have even more of a unique perspective of seeing firsthand how the equation doesn't always add up, because in addition to your solo stuff, you've also toured and been part of big records. And that kind of intimate knowledge of seeing when things go really well when maybe you weren't expecting it, and then maybe don't go well when you were really expecting it to.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I feel like that can be a hard lesson for a lot of us. And I would imagine might be helpful when you also see it up close happening for other people.
We were talking about this as well. A lot of our experiences as backup singers, we've learned a lot through watching other artists. So it's given
what
us
to do and what not to do.
Yeah. How to lead a band, how to hold your stage presence in a place that is giving to the audience, but also creating mystique around who you are, or just strictly being an entertainer. Yeah. There's some people who do
all of that
really well, and there's some people who struggle at it. Even though they might be big artists, they may not be the best entertainers. And really trying to find our place in that. I think being backup singers, that has given us a lot of just experience in singing for 75,000 people at Coachella with the Shins, and then turning around and playing for 150 people at our show the next week in the basement here. You get that juxtaposition, but I think for us, we feel really grateful that we get those calls and that we get to do that, because the pressure's off of us in those situations. Yes, we have to deliver, and yes, we have to practice
and learn the material and do all the things.
And have the outfits. Which, you know, is just part of our thing. We get to be 20 feet from stardom. We get to be part of the fabric. We don't have to be the focal point. And there's a pressure that comes off of that when it isn't our gig. We're on tour with Foster the People, and we're literally just getting in the buzz and going to the next location. We're not worried about any of the logistics. We're just getting off. We're getting changed into
that's like our vacation time.
We're warm. We're going out and just having a blast singing, and that's it.
If anybody needs any backup singers.
That for us, again, creates balance. It's our time to sing together, which is something we love to do, but it takes the pressure off of us in a different way that we don't have to be the band leader. But I do think, you know, with this record, and what we hope people will take away from this record is that we feel like we've earned our time to be at the front of the stage and to be the lead singers of the Watson Twins, and to hold that presence has just taken us some time to get there. But we really feel like with this record that it's our time.
And I like that you brought up the diversification of all of this. And I think that is truly the key to not only being successful just on a personal level of feeling like, okay, I'm doing it for me. I'm doing these things because I enjoy them. I'm doing these things because it fills my cup. We, you know, have spent a lot of time in the music industry doing things that didn't fill the cup. And when you do that, guess what? The results are not there. That is actually an A plus B does equal C kind of situation. It's like if you're continually investing in things that you don't care about, or that you're not invested in, or don't make you happy, you're going to perpetuate that cycle. So it's like that's something that through our experiences of doing some things that were like, maybe we shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Wow, that really sucked. Let's not do that again. I think that's something that we've learned through our experiences too, which have allowed us to feel like when we agree on something and we're like, yes, we're doing that, it's magic. And it really does just happen. I mean, that's the beauty of it. It's, oh, wow, like we didn't even really have to push that hard. And this whole thing just opened up. And that's kind of our experience.
It's the trust your gut mentality, which sometimes what you think is your gut is actually your ego talking. So it's like really important to find the differentiation between those two. And if it's not unanimous, it doesn't happen. That's where we're at in our career. And I think
we talk about stuff a lot too, you know, where it's like we might be on the fence about something and like, oh, should we do this? Should we not? Let's talk about it. And usually we both come to the same conclusion. And that's just because, again, we're listening to that real deep inner voice that's like, yeah, we're going to pass on that. Even though on paper, this looks incredible, like this makes zero sense.
And I think that goes back to the other question of just like working together and having businesses together and being collaborators since birth. To say like, how do you guys do it? I think we have a really strong relationship based on just like our upbringing. Of course, we have an older sister, but she's 10 years older, and it was just the two of us. And our father passed away when we were 2. And so my mom was a single mom. And so we had to rely on each other for a lot. And we were never competitive. We were always supportive of each other. We didn't compete for guys or popularity or friends. It was just strictly a supportive relationship. We joke about our mom taught us how to break a cookie exactly in half because your sister's going to get to pick which piece she wants first, you know? That's just kind of how we were raised. And I think we've figured out being a twin is super special. And like we got this gift, and so why wouldn't we take advantage of it?
And that's part of,
it's annoying to our husbands and business partner, but
people are always like, what's it like to be a twin? I'm like, I don't know what it's like not to be a twin. I don't know that it's something I can really differentiate between being a solo person and being a twin. Yeah, we were same DNA, same egg. Don't think about it too much because it gets really weird really fast. Okay.
Our friends,
science is weird. Okay.
Our friends laugh, but there are a lot of differences about us as well. And we definitely are each other's cheerleaders in those weaknesses that we know that the other person has. You know, it's like,
I have weaknesses. I was going to talk to you about that after this interview.
got some work to do, but you're capable. You're
Therapy's really paying off. She's like, hold on, I just have a few things to mention. Let's start at number 1. We'll end at 100, okay? That's fine. Yeah.
Well, I think culturally we like put so much emphasis on individuality and independence. So I feel like the concept of like, wait, there's somebody else in the world that's exactly like you or perceived to be exactly like you, like that must be hard and weird. I've always thought it seems really beautiful. I've just been someone who's lived my whole life being like, where's my like soulmate? Which I've realized I've really focused it on like a girl, like a best friend, because I've had Aaron since I was 21 years old. And I'm like, where's my soulmate sister in life? And I'm like, oh, you don't count.
There are also things you bring up to me as if I'm your soul sister. And I'm like, sister. I'm sorry. I'm trying hard, but this is just going right over my head. I'm sorry.
He's many times been like, I'm not your girlfriend.
What we talked about a lot just in the making of this record and just in our career in general is like our community has over and over again supported us from the LA days of Silver Lake and being in that up and coming music scene and working at Friends Studios and rehearsing in Silver Sun Pickups rehearsal space. And then next door was like Folk Implosion. We had this community that was happening around us that supported us and championed us. And I think that when you have that, you start to realize there is the greater than one,
You're always stronger in community. That's just the truth.
Whether you're making music in a silo or whether you're trying to run your band in a silo or whether you're an autonomous entity, whatever that is, I truly believe that you can't do it on your own. We need fans, we need bands, we need collaborators. And if you create that community with people you trust, I think it's easier for us to collaborate. We wrote an essay for Relics magazine and it was together. But it was literally, I wrote it and then I passed it off to her. She finished it. Yeah. And then she passed it back to me. I did some work on it and then she did some work on it and then we turned it in. So it's definitely collaborative.
Really
and it started, it's called, I think, the art of collaboration. The art of collaboration. I wanted to call it...
No, the spirit of collaboration.
The spirit of collaboration, that's right. I wanted to call it collaborating since conception. Because really when you think about it, she thought it was too weird. But when you think about it, it's a weird
I don't even think about my parents having sex, okay?
But when you think about it, it's a weird concept to be like, even in the womb, we had to navigate each other, which is like a weird thought. These two beings, from the moment they are created, are in this environment together and they have to work together and move around each other and, hey, move over or share food. I mean, when you really think about it, it's been our whole life, literally our whole life, that we've been doing that and collaborating with each other and working towards a goal, to be born, to stay alive, whatever it is. So where people maybe don't understand it, for us, I don't have that need to be independent in a way. I mean, like my husband would say I'm very independent. That's just because I'm a driven person that is just like, I'm doing it, But really that independence, I'm only able to do that based on my community, which is my family, the support of my friends. That's really what allows you to give you the courage and also the strength to take on new experiences. That community, that's something that we realized is really where our lifeblood comes from.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I can imagine that there are times that you guys step on each other's toes or there is rub and it's not just pure, beautiful, glorious collaboration.
The guys in that band go, mommy and mommy, the mommies are fighting again.
Yeah. How do you guys work through that?
It doesn't last very long. It's like being in a marriage. Usually if one of us is rubbing the other one, we know why. So it's like, okay, I heard you, enough, time out. And I think
it's normally something dumb too, like it's about directions or where we should stop to eat. We don't have like major decision-making conversations that are arguments just because we know that gets nowhere. And we're usually fighting about something super dumb.
Sometimes if it is business stuff, it's more because we both are really trying to figure out what the best thing is. And because we now, having multiple spaces, we have employees now. A lot of times we're not just making the decision for us or the band or whatever. It's like we're making decisions for a group of people that we feel responsible for and that we want to help. And we want to make sure we're taking care of them. And so those heated discussions are more on the business side of things where these are just big decisions. And so that it can get heated, not necessarily at each other, but at the stress of, gosh, I hope we make the right decision, or I'm feeling the tension. And I think the older we've gotten too, it's like being very transparent. She called me the other day and it's a dumb story. I was trying to buy plants. The farmer's market was a mess. And I just was like, I'm losing my mind right now. We're under a lot of stress because we're opening our new space and we have a show this week and, all the things. And I was just like, started to tear up. She was like, okay, well, this, and this. And I was like, I'm sorry. I was like, I'm really, really overwhelmed right now. And just saying that allowed me to be vulnerable and allowed me to communicate. And then she was like, I got you. What do you need from me? And understanding those communication patterns. And I think that's also checking in with the people when you're on the road with people or when you're collaborating with people. It's sometimes that end goal or that destination that you're going to, figuratively or literally, they got a lot going on that has nothing to do with that destination. And we're just humans trying to navigate all this, our personal lives, our finances, all those things. And I think those check-ins with people and just being real with people is what everyone just wants to be seen and heard.
Yeah. That's one thing I would say, really just finding value in your people and understanding that as front people, like, it's our project. It's our name on the bill, and our players are coming out to support us and understanding that they're an enormous piece of the equation and delivering our music to people the way we want it to sound. And the work and time that they put in it is really important. And, we always do, like, at the end of a tour, we try to find a really great restaurant. The last night of tour, we go eat as a family style together, 5 p.m. before we go to check, or 4:30, whatever we have to do to get it in before check. Yeah. But we will do that at the end of every tour just to show our gratitude for the time and effort that everybody puts in. The guys always say, like, you guys work harder than everybody. And I'm like, yeah, it's our baby. And there's two of us.
Yeah. Well, but I think that, again, communicating, if you're lucky in life, you get a sibling or a spouse, a partner that you feel safe enough to bicker with and to argue with, and then hopefully also spend time learning how to better communicate to each other. And I think about that all the time, about how much it's not really normalized to also translate that to friendships and then working relationships, that we need that same type of help or therapy or whatever for how we can communicate with our friends, our coworkers, our employees, whatever, so that we are direct and honest without harming each other, and also sharing the truth rather than harboring resentments, not communicating. So I would imagine also working with you guys, for those in your band, they get to witness that, and then therefore hopefully by proxy inhale it a little bit.
Well, I think it's all the vibe that you set. You're band leaders, but you're also leaders of the environment in the van.
Yeah.
I guess in corporate life, it'd be like the culture, right? Like the corporate culture, whatever it would be. You set the tone for that. Like we've said this whole conversation, this job is not normal. If you think of touring as like a business trip, it's really strange. Most people in corporate America, like, they fly on their own. You're pretty autonomous together. Yeah. It's basically like being on tour, whether you're in a bus or you're in a van or whatever it is, you're in a moving dorm room, essentially. It takes that extra effort to, like, be comfortable and to be vulnerable. And the more enjoyable tours I've been on and bands that I've been in that are longer running, we definitely had our differences. We definitely had grievances, but you could talk about it openly, and it was cool. And quickly, when it's open, gets to a point that people are like, that's happening. This is them being them, and that's cool. I love this person for who they are, and they're just having a rough day, and it is what it is. And
yeah. The question I like is when you're out on the road and somebody says, oh, is this business or pleasure? Or you're like,
oh, yeah.
I don't know. What is it? Probably for business or pleasure. This is a good question. Let me let you know how today goes, okay?
Yeah, whenever I book flights on Southwest, it always says, is this like a business trip or personal? And I'm like, everything's business, but everything's personal.
My favorite is that somebody described being a touring musician as every day is a Monday and a Saturday at the same time. Oh, can you hear me all right? Oh no, we froze.
Oh no, can you hear us?
Thanks for having us, guys.
Oh no,
I don't know if you can hear us, but that was a great conversation, and we think we're done, but we're just grateful for you guys having us. Thank you.
Well, there you have it. For all of you guys that have spent time on Zoom in the last 3 years during the pandemic, you can understand how the internet works sometimes, and it just was not in our cards today, and we couldn't get the conversation restarted. So we just want to say a big thank you to the Watson twins for carving out time in their day to be here with us and sharing such nuggets of wisdom in this show.
Yeah, and we'll see you next week.
Here's the outro music. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Other 22 Hours podcast. You can find more info on this episode, including links to things that we talked about, by going to theother22hours.com and clicking on episodes.
Reviews go a long way in getting our show in front of more listeners. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to go leave a quick review wherever you listen to podcasts. And we'll see you back here next week for another episode.